I call the disability community the last majority because
Mm-hmm.
all day we'll talk rich, poor, gay, straight, black, white, male, female, but we will never talk walk, roll.
I wanted to share the message that the world that we exist in as disabled people, like a harsh reality that we face is like the inaccessibility. Anyone just transitioning from a non-disabled life to a disabled life, you grieve it and you allow yourself to grieve it. Otherwise, it's going to catch up to you.
We don't show grief in society. We don't show the frailty of life because we'd probably protect it more. Breath has been a saving grace for me. It probably kept me on this planet multiple different times of just like, buddy, just slow down, focus on your breath and not your thoughts.
Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast.
Before we begin the next episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to ask for your support in helping us grow our podcast.
Take a moment to like, subscribe, or follow on whatever platform you're watching this on.
Your engagement helps us to grow our platform as well as allows us to invite even more interesting interviews in the future. I hope you enjoy the following episode and wish that you gain insight, clarity, or knowledge about what it means for you to embrace being human.
Thank you so much, Anna, for taking the time to be a guest on the Embracing Human podcast. It is so wonderful to see you as we were catching up before I hit record. It's been quite some time since we've caught up and how different life may have been since the first time we met at the Abilities Expo in 2022, maybe.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy to see the power of community and the way that we were connected through a mutual friend and another disability advocate. Something that maybe we just dive right into, this idea of community. You know, as we were talking about, the world is definitely struggling these days. As a social media disability advocate and influencer, how community has played a role in your path forward.
The main reason why I started everything that I did was to make my community, the disability community, feel seen and heard. But it does get lonely at times, even knowing that I'm serving a community, but then recognizing that this job is very lonely at times because we're not like sharing space with each other. It's more like I see these notifications pop up and sure, they're like, I know that's a person behind the screen typing all this, but sometimes it's different when you have an in-person interaction and someone tells you these words and share time with you. But yeah, I mean, like finding community, community was everything on how I got to like post-traumatic growth.
Mm.
I think like my community within like my family and friends that I have here in Kansas City, they have shielded me from a lot of things that could have like hurt me in the long run mentally. And so there's just like I'm supported strongly by my communities all around me, whether that be the disability community, the online world, the world that I exist in Kansas City and everything. So
It reminds me of the first time I met the rest of your family. And I came to Kansas City to do a breathwork event with your sister Kat. Shout out to Kat as just another amazing human in my life. And, you know, I walked into your house and there was 17 probably different women wearing the same shirt with the same name. And your mom comes up to me and introduces herself as, I don't even remember what the name on the shirt was. It was
not
like,
about this.
yeah. And you know, if I'm being really honest, the thing that struck me so much was like how close your family was.
Right.
You know,
Right.
coming from someone who did not have a close family, does not have a close family, like
Hmm.
it struck me so deeply the level of care and love that was filling that house. Like it was so inspiring.
Wow.
And I even get emotional just thinking about it of like, wow, like this exists, you know,
Yeah.
like, and to hear you share your stories about the ways in which your family rallied behind you and how you felt cared for and could leave the hospital knowing that, you know, whether it's UTIs or pressure sores were would be managed was just
Mhm.
it really touched me. And I what would your perspective or advice be to people who maybe it's on, you know, a similar recovery path or healing path that you've been on, but in general, right? Like a lot of people healing like don't feel like they can rely on their family. And you've met thousands of people over your time. What do you say to those people that say they can't rely on their family for that type of support?
Right. Yeah. And I understand that it is a huge privilege to have the family and support system that I do. For those that don't necessarily feel like they have that in their lives and they're going through a life-altering injury, I think my biggest advice would be to tap into the community that you have now joined, which is the disability community, unless you had a disability before and you were already tapped in. Again, like with disability being a huge umbrella term, there's so many sectors of disability. And for instance, like a spinal cord injury, the spinal cord injury community is so strong and so empowering. They're so loving and they're so willing to become your mentor and go beside you and like hold your hand essentially for the first couple of months. And I know that like in those early days of injury, sometimes it can be difficult to associate with other disabled people, and that comes probably from an internalized ableism. I have gotten so much resources and insights from other people who can relate to me in so many different ways, and they have been like just everything.
You know, that you mentioned something on a previous podcast that I was kind of doing some research before this. And I say this often, you know, I think the statistics you put out was like 15%, or it was like the disability community is 1 billion strong in the
Mhm.
world.
Right.
And the likelihood, if we're lucky enough, I mean, if we're lucky enough, we'll join the disability community at some point. You
Right.
know, as I wear glasses, technically that is the largest disability in the world. And, you know, people are like, oh, that's whatever, you know, but then the reality of whether you use a cane or a walker or some form of assistance to move through your day-to-day basis, a chair, etc. Like the adage I say is, I call the disability community the last majority, because
Mm-hmm.
all day we'll talk rich, poor, gay, straight, black, white, male, female, but we will never talk walk, roll.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is this out of sight, out of mind. You know, we've terraformed the earth in a way where it's not built accessibly. Since this listenership is what I would say mostly able-bodied, just based on, you know, my following, is
Mm-hmm.
could you give our listenership just an insight into what it is like, what accessibility means, and the challenges that are faced by so many that we have no idea about?
Accessibility. Wow, this is like a topic that I could talk on for so long. I think one of the main reasons why I started the work online and the platform that I've built online was because I wanted to share the message that the world that we exist in as disabled people, like a harsh reality that we face, is like the inaccessibility. And oftentimes, I think people get lost in the mindset of curing disabled people and making them appear and operate normal, whatever that means, like for the person. And in doing so, I think we don't address the structural inaccessibility that exists in our world because we're so caught up in this idea of like we need to be spending money towards a cure, and some disabled people don't necessarily want that. Like for me personally, I could say that I there was a cure tomorrow, I wouldn't take it. And someone said it, another disability advocate said it best, and she was mentioning that when it comes to accessibility, again, there's just not a lot of it out there. And this was from Judy Human, and she said something along the lines of like, if I have to feel grateful for a bathroom that's accessible to me, when will I ever be treated as a value to society? And oh my gosh, those words were just I think I butchered it, but it was like somewhere along those lines, and it just like really hit me in the idea of like sometimes people they see like accessible parking and they're like, well, you have privilege in a spot that's closer. But like little things like that are like, why are you complaining when we have a bathroom for you? And I'm like, well, the fact is like you have a bathroom for me. And everyone else who can fit and use and operate a normal stall can go to like the seven other options. And so like accessibility is just crucial overall to be able to like help people just get around in the world.
Yeah, in a way, you kind of describe the difference between visibility, accessibility, and equity.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between, you know, like, oh, what you should be grateful you have a bathroom. And it's like, yeah, that most of the time I have to wait for because people just use it, you know, like and I'll never forget this. I had a friend whose mom, I guess this was when he was really little because she was in the same bathroom as him, but like she would slap him for using that bathroom. She's like, that ain't your bathroom, bro. You know,
Yeah.
you don't want to use that and like And the reason I'm saying that is because like in Hawaii, I see a chair user maybe once every 3 months.
Oh,
It
wow.
is so incredibly inaccessible here that there's no reason to visit. Maybe
Mm,
it's different on Oahu. I'm sure it's different on Oahu, but like in general, accessibility in Hawaii is trash,
mm-hmm.
and so the amount of non-placarded cars I see in accessible parking is like really disappointing.
Right.
But also like these people never see anybody using them. So it's like, oh well, whatever. And so
Yeah, exactly.
there's this really interesting opportunity to bring this to the front line, right? And so I'm curious, and you kind of talked about it a little earlier, but just maybe more in depth of like how your social media platforms, which have grown significantly. I think when I met you, I don't even know if you had 10,000 followers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like maybe you did, maybe you had like 14. How you've used your platforms to not only educate and advocate, but to shine light and combat this out of sight, out of mind idea.
Yeah. I mean, all the posts that I upload, they're carefully thought through, and so much time and effort and love goes into all of them. And they fall under these pillars that I have on how I want to show up for the world, and that being to educate, to resource, or to shine light on the mundane everyday tasks, but look
Mm.
different as I adapt it towards me. So right now I'm like in the middle of this Pilates series, and I think it's been very eye-opening for not only the Pilates world, but also like disabled people. I think Pilates is a workout regime that it originated off of disabled veterans, but it's slowly, I think the world took it and made it a trendy thing that it slowly like shifted away from its purpose. Because I didn't even know that that was the how it started
I
and
had
that
no idea.
it adapted in that way. That series has been like great because I tapped into the Pilates world, and a lot of the instructors have like messaged and commented on that post about how eye-opening that has been for them, and how there's not a lot of instructors who are well versed with like helping adaptive athletes and
Mm-hmm.
bringing them into the studio, and working on different movements. And sometimes people think we're too fragile and they're too worried. And then I hope this just opens up the conversation of that we can, be here and we can adapt, and we are literally professional problem solvers and we always find a way. So I think that speaks to a lot of the type of posts that I create, whether that be like educational or just resourceful.
From the moment I met you, loved your content. It is so incredibly not only well thought out and filmed, but like just deeply caring. For you to consider this level of anything from fashion to adaptive athletes to one of my favorite aspects that you've really dove into over the past couple of years is travel and like the airline stuff of like, hey, like I cannot tell you how many times I saw a post where I'm like, damn, this girl's sitting at the front of the plane. Like, how did she pull this off? Like, this is so epic. And like, and helping people understand, like, hey, you don't have to put your chair under the plane to hopefully not get it broken. Cause I cannot tell you, I'm sure you're in this boat as well, of how many people have had damaged, especially power chairs that are like, oh, just
Right.
watching it go up the conveyor belt and falling off and then throw it back on. And it's like, oh my God, like, and to shine light on this
Mhm.
to to stand in the face of just disregard or whatever level of tyranny you want to put in here and help people see like, hey, you have a voice, like, and you can use it. And
Mhm.
so tell me a little bit about what it was like to start your social media journey and to give yourself that voice and to advocate for yourself and then therefore others.
Right. Yeah. So I, in high school, studied film for 4 years. There was this program that was supposed to help with career development, and I applied for the program. And the specific program that I applied for was called e-communications, and there was four strands. There was web design, graphic design, video, and animation. I was in the video strand under film. And that's kind of where this whole being behind the camera, artist like formulated. And I loved like just everything about it. So that's where my creativity kind of started. And I started tapping into picking up a camera and recording myself, and then just falling in love with like the editing process. And once I graduated high school, so I walked across the stage with my leg braces, and that, of course, took off because the news loves hearing stories like that. In retrospect, I kind of cringe at those kind of moments, but like it is what launched just like my name, and it got people and to drive traffic to my account. And so I started Anna Sarol, my, I'm going to call it like disability advocacy page, in hopes that I would be able to tap into that audience that are interested in just my testimony and my story, and slowly transition to not focusing on me, but now bringing it back to the community of like, this needs to be talked about more. And someone needs to say something about this. And the, everyday person needs to be educated on disability, just like being more knowledgeable and educated on what this life entails. Because again, at the end of the day, like if what you said, if we're lucky enough, we will live long enough, thus we will have disabilities. And that is, I say that, and I don't say it in the sense of like, you should be scared for that. I say it in the sense of like, you should care about this because you need to. And because this might not even affect you, if you live long enough, but it will affect your neighbors, your coworkers, your nieces, nephews, your future children. I mean, like everyone. Like disability does not discriminate. It is seen in every facet of life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just went on a whole tangent, but I
No,
just
it's so
really at
valuable.
that point.
It's so
So,
valuable. If we're that's the thing that I joined this community in the sense of through work, like through OB and meeting the people at the Abilities Expo and traveling around the country and the world, like sharing this product. And, 1 in 5 people will join the disability in some form or fashion, and so some people it's waking up with transverse myelitis. Some people it's having a child with spina bifida. Some people it's they fell during a floor routine, like, or maybe it wasn't a floor routine, but like the just mishap, and for that, like, you're right. We should care about this community because we might enter it and we have no knowing if we will or not, or if it's going to be our friend or our family member or our neighbor. And I think we're in a time in society where it's like, hey, are we going to care about each other? Or are we just going to rip each other to shreds? It's like we have an opportunity to evolve. And that's the way I like to see it is I think we're evolving, that we have care beyond ourselves now. And it's not something, it's like most people don't think about it until they're in it. And that's a very oops place to be for a lot of people,
right.
and so I don't think it was a tangent at all. I think it's a reality that most of us don't even know we should consider.
Absolutely.
When you answered that, you said something in a way that really triggered something in me. You said, I created Anna Sarol, my disability page. And I was like, I also wonder post injury, what was the process like for you creating the new version of yourself? Because I'm sure that happened like in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. I mean, it was, gosh, as anyone with a spinal cord injury or anyone just transitioning from a non-disabled life to a disabled life, you grieve it and you allow yourself to grieve it. Otherwise, it's going to catch up to you. I always have this this conversation with other spinal cord injury paraplegics and quads about if you were to get your paralysis at a certain age, like what age would you ideally want it? And there's obviously no
Wow.
right or wrong answer, but I think about this and I consider it a lot because as someone who was 14 and I just entered high school, I had this idea that I wanted to become a nurse and follow my dad and mom's footsteps. and very quickly realized that I still can do it as someone with a spinal cord injury, but I don't know if that was the right path that I wanted to go post injury, just for me personally. I mean, this also goes back to I felt supported enough to explore this by my family, and explore the different versions of me. And I saw this one quote on TikTok, and it was like, it was a video montage of siblings. And the quote said, like, they clapped so loud that I didn't notice, like, no one else did. And that's how I felt when I think and consider my first couple of years post injury, and feeling supported by my siblings, that I could explore different options because I knew that I wouldn't fall. But yeah, I mean, like, and that also, like, internally, I did a lot of work too. I I credit them to a lot, but also you have to acknowledge that you yourself has gone through what you have gone through, and you had to pull yourself out of it. So it was hard. It was a struggle, but I mean, yeah, it was something that had to be done, and I'm glad that I'm the version that I am today.
I'm so glad you started with the answer you did, which was grief. I
Hmm.
think grief has been probably the deepest teacher I've ever had. Like I didn't know before Chester died and before I was like invited into the ceremony of grief. Like I used to say, I think, because I didn't really like know it to be true or not, that I think all inner child work is grief work, grieving the life we wish we had, or grieving the parents we wish we had, or grieving whatever, grieving the attachment style we didn't get. And so I think there's something that we don't show grief in society. We don't show the frailty of life because we'd probably protect it more.
Hmm.
And I'm curious your process with grief, and maybe it's grief in other ways. Maybe it's grieving other parts beyond your ability to walk, that you've whether gone through yourself or helped other people through sharing your story, but just, maybe it hasn't been a death of another, but version, a death of a future you thought you were going to have.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, once again, like, outside of career also, like, I dedicated my life to gymnastics for 7 years. And then when I got injured through gymnastics, it was grieving that gymnast that didn't get to her last podium that she wanted. Like, the goal for me in that stage of life was to go all the way and go to the Olympics. And grieving that my journey as an athlete abruptly ended in the way that it did, and then on top of that, it led to me not walking again. Like, that was just like a very big struggle. I think a lot of people often look at my journey and they're like, you remained optimistic all the way through. And I'm like, but you didn't see these like dark moments. And I understand it sounds nice to like say like, oh, I conquered through everything, but like that's not the reality. And I don't want to push out that message that like I am continuously joyful and happy and have always been. Because again, that's not reality. And I think people compare themselves to that, and they often fall in spiral. But yeah, I mean, like, grieving the gymnast that didn't get to live on, and then in order for that to happen, I decided to return back to the sport. And instead of obviously participating in it, I wanted to coach. And so for the first like 5 years post injury, I was a coach for the high school program that I was in when I got injured. And I mean, that was so fulfilling in the sense of like the inner athlete did live on. And
Mm-hmm.
it felt satisfied that I was leaving my own terms once I did retire from coaching, of like, yeah, that I would leave on my own terms, that this was my choice, and I'm deciding to leave the sport behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was huge.
Yeah. I remember listening to the Nebraska Furniture Mart interview last night, and just you recanting that story of not getting to podium the last time in your senior year, or
Mhm.
just the other things that you had to confront and sit with. And and you can have the most loving and supportive family in the world, and I'm sure at times they held your hand through it, but also just
Right.
the reality that you had to sit with yourself in that.
Mhm.
And I think this is part of this mental health thing that's coming, whether called fashion or fad because of social media, but like the reality of like the deepening experience that we're all having, to be like, how do I sit with this? Like, what do I do here? How do I feel this? Like, it's so big, it feels like it's going to make me explode, and I'm curious if you could share a little bit on what some of the resources you used during that mental health journey and emotional journey, whether it's therapy or your bachelor's is in psychology. So my guess is you found tools. I know we've talked a lot about meditation. So yeah, what did that look like for you? What were some of the things that you tried that worked really well? Some of the things that you were like, that didn't do anything?
So I tried again, like I feel like any athlete just wants to, if they transition to like becoming disabled, they want to like go all in into adaptive sports. So I tried adaptive sports and I think gymnastics, like it translates to everything, but it also doesn't translate to anything because I'm not an all athlete. Like I don't have that. I have that hand-eye coordination, but it's just it looks different. And a lot of the adaptive sports, I mean, like I won't say that all of them require hand-eye coordination with a ball, but you have wheelchair basketball, wheelchair tennis, you have mono skiing on snow and water. The first adaptive sport I attempted was mono skiing on snow. And I feel like that was just the worst option I could have possibly come up with because I do not do well with snow or cold. And so like forcing myself to do a outdoor sport in the middle of winter was just like a recipe for disaster. But I recall this moment where the instructor was telling me to find my center of balance. And as a gymnast, my key event was the balancing beam. Like I was first, that was like my event. And so when I heard that feedback, I automatically was like, got defensive. And I recognize that now, obviously. But I was just like, find my balance point. Like I was awarded for my balance at one
Mm,
point, and I had this like, title of being the balance beam queen and stuff. So I remember that I started shying away from adaptive sports after that. And then it took me a couple of years to reintroduce like different sports like adaptive basketball. That was pretty cool. I think I've just learned to be okay with knowing that I'm not going to be like an adaptive athlete that I want to be. But that was something that I tried to cope and did not work. Other things that I've done, I mean, again, like I'm hardwired extrovert. And so I did all the things socially that I possibly could. And then, as you said, meditation, I started the meditation journey a couple of years after my injury. So I'm going on to almost 10 years and I probably started meditating. I want to say like 2020 was the year that like I started dipping my toes into meditation, specifically mindfulness meditation. Because I know when we met, I had some experience. As Scott was saying, I have a bachelor's in psychology and I've just read up on so much research and literature about how beneficial mindfulness meditation is. And I have been the most consistent this year with it.
mm,
Um, and my goal was always to do like just 10 minutes of intentional breathing and
mhm,
non-stimulated, like just be with the breath. And that truly, like, I don't think I fully comprehend what that has done for me, but I know from the research and literature of what it's done for other people that it has done so much for me.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, breath has been a saving grace for me. Probably kept me on this planet multiple different times of just like, buddy, just slow down, focus on your breath and not your thoughts.
Mhm.
Like if anything, that's what meditation in a nutshell was to me, is like as big and as loud and as compelling as the thoughts may be to follow and focus on, there's something more true and rooted that is the breath. And some days sitting still and just breathing is one of the hardest things I could do, because
Mhm.
my mind is like, no, we need to focus on this. And it's like, I hear you, buddy.
Yeah.
And we're just going to keep sitting here doing nothing, like it's
Yeah.
so incredibly hard sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I have the tendency to ruminate. So doing mindfulness meditation has, I mean, like it's made me mentally strong and
Mm-hmm.
just to think about where your mind's at.
Yeah. Yeah. I say, like, I think meditation is my number one. Like, I've been practicing breath work for 10 years, contrast therapy or journaling, therapy, all that. Like, number one is meditation. Number
Hmm.
one is sitting still and doing nothing, because it is the hardest thing for me to do.
Right.
For a number of different reasons, of like, no, I got to be productive because my self-worth is based upon my output, or no, I've got to work because I need to pay my bills, or
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. And it's like, if I don't have 10 minutes to do nothing, I don't have a life,
Right.
And some people are like, whoa, that's pretty intense, bro. And it's like, when you really understand the profundity of that statement, like, it's actually really eye-opening to be like, if you don't have time to do nothing for 10 minutes, like, what are you doing?
Hmm.
And that's for a lot of people. And I'm not saying it's the panacea for anybody. Like, some people, it's not meditation. I like to say, like, for some people, it's not breath work. It's not, some people, it's knitting. It's
Yeah.
like going in the forest. It's, sitting out and watching bird feeders. Like, and I think just having the space to explore that is crucial. And I'm curious, because I know we've practiced breath work at least twice, maybe more. I'm curious if you can recall kind of what was your experience like to, not like meditation, breathe calmly and slowly, but to actually breathe in an excitatorily pattern to cause an experience inside of your somatic body.
I remember when we did that, my body just felt so much energy within me. Like there was just so much. And it just had like I had that mind body connection probably the most when we were doing that type of breath work than I've had really. And I think it's like an area that's not talked about enough to connect with the mind and the body. And that was the most that I felt it.
Mm,
So, I mean, like
love that.
it was huge.
Love that. Yeah, and what a beautiful thing, right? Like, to establish maybe not a new way of being with the mind body connection, but like to reestablish a beautiful connection to your body, because for so many people in the disability community, the connection to the body can be a very negative one, of like body pain and aches and nerve pain, like from the things that I've heard. Could you speak a little bit to what it's been like to establish a loving connection to your container, and to one where you're not trying to fix some label of brokenness that someone else gave you?
Society often views disabled people as broken and labels it as broken. And it took everything in me to not fall for that becoming disabled, I am now broken. Because like your body and you're going to live with your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm so adamant on the small habits that will create long lasting change physically, mentally, spiritually, all of it. But just to recognize that there is an inner critic that you have within you and to know that you have to unlearn some things. There's things that you have to unlearn. I'm in the big season of my life of like trying to unlearn different thoughts, different behaviors, different ways of being that I think I was fed to by society, by, you know, sometimes by family, whether it be unhealthy or healthy. Yeah. It's definitely important to take the time to acknowledge that you're stuck with yourself And do you like yourself? And to truly
Right.
ask those deep questions so that you can understand more and become more conscious of it.
So true. And I love the distinction that you maybe not even knowingly gave of like you and your spinal cord, like you and your body, like your spinal cord may have been broken, but you are not your spinal cord. Right?
Right.
Like if we cut your hand off, you're still Anna. And
Mhm.
before you were named Anna, you were still you.
Mhm.
And so what really are we, and how do we, to your point of the inner room, like I call him the inner roommate. Like he lives with me. Sometimes we argue. Sometimes he's really fun to hang out with. And what I have found most notably is like it doesn't really work to force him into something else.
Mhm.
Like to be like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna put this gun to your head, and if you don't do this thing, you're done. And it's
Mhm.
like hostile takeovers don't really work. And
Mhm.
so to your point about the sustainable long-term solutions are usually really small steps. They're
Mhm.
not, okay, I'm going to go do this crazy thing and I'm going to do it. I'm going to meditate for an hour every day. It's like,
Uh,
I remember my old business partner would say, he's like, I want to meditate for an hour every day. I'm like, how often you do that? He's like, maybe once or twice a month. I'm like,
yeah.
got it. Like, okay, how's that
Right.
working out? And to your point of like the sustainable change, right? And you may have heard this, like Tony Robbins uses it in a lot of his things of like, okay, if you ask someone what the best thing that could happen in their life would be, it would be winning the lottery. And if you
Mhm.
ask someone what the worst thing in their life would be, it'd be becoming paralyzed.
Yeah.
And if you do the study of, okay, so you take these people before and after the events and you go 5 years out, who is happier?
Mhm.
And it's a trick question
Right.
because the answer is whoever was before,
Mm.
like, because we see this, right? The curse of the lottery. People get all this money and they blow it and they hate themselves. A lot of people kill themselves. And the
Mhm.
same with the disability community of, and my guess is you were a very resilient and driven and committed person before, thank God for gymnastics or your family or just who you were for yourself.
Mhm.
Before and now after as well, that is like such a key aspect to who we get to be for ourselves, and you said in our ways of being. And I don't think we stress that enough in society. We talk about habits, and it's like, yeah, but your habits belong to your identity,
Mm.
so who are you for you? And most people are a tyrant or they're a bully or they're a hater or a critic. Can you speak a little bit to that and how you've worked with that inner critic and like how you hold her on her hard days or how you buoy her up on, I remember in this last podcast you were talking about not focusing on the shitty comments on social media, but what are some of the practical or on the court um things you do to be with her?
I think the first step is obviously to acknowledge that you're feeding yourself that. I think that without awareness, you really can't make change in a positive, healthy way. Um, yeah, but just to stop and recognize that you are being your inner critic, and these are words you would not say to a friend. And if you did, then you're a terrible friend. You're a terrible friend for yourself if you're doing that.
Right.
Um, Yeah, but just to f pause and reflect, but also to like get curious about that. Like, where did you learn that? Why do you think this way? Because like you probably gathered this somewhere in your life experience, and like why is that? Because you need to like deep dive into that so that you can evaluate the foundation in which you build your thoughts and behaviors and tendencies through. Yeah, acknowledgement's the first step for sure. And then curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really big into CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So reframing certain thoughts and opinions is very big on my eyes of like just to have a different perspective. And so
Mm-hmm.
that whole framework is what I base a lot of my thoughts on and reflect on.
So good. I love what you said there, Anna, because it really does. The first step is acknowledgement. It is awareness, right? Like till till we make the unconscious like the quote, I think it's Carl Jung, is until we make the unconscious conscious, we'll live our lives and call it fate,
Mm-hmm.
something to that effect. And until we shine a light on it and being like, wow, I'm doing that. And I am the one doing that. No one's giving me that. Like no one's talking in my head. Like, yes, I could be like, well, my childhood and this is the way my parents spoke over me, but that's after the awareness. The first
Mm-hmm.
step is being like, this is what's occurring right now, and this is on me. And for a lot of people, that level of responsibility may not even be available yet. It maybe the first step is just the acknowledgement of noticing of like, I'm currently beating the shit out of myself right now,
Yeah.
and it sucks, and I don't know why I'm doing it, and I acknowledge that I can't stop. But that's where the curiosity comes in, and I love that. That's what the second thing you said. You're a master, and you don't even know it. Is without gentle, compassionate curiosity, we're forcing.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming in there as a hostile takeover and being like, "Hey, I don't like the way you talk. So this is how you're going to talk now." And that part's like, "Oh, that's funny. That's really cute. Like you think you run this show? Watch this. I'm going to just terrorize you now." And it's
Yeah.
like, "No, I'm just going to meditate." And then 3 minutes in the meditation, it's like, I think my phone's ringing, like the learning how to be with these parts, and being gentle about like, what's going on here, bud? And I think this is why I've had success with addictions is like, oh, this is actually a really beautiful coping strategy. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I am a huge fan of the result I'm getting because of it.
Right.
I feel better. I'm not despairing. I'm not spiraling. Yeah, like I'm not a huge fan of the ramifications of said coping strategy, but I can acknowledge like it is helpful, and people take nothing else from this podcast than those two things of like just acknowledge and be the witness and be
Mm-hmm.
curious about why you're doing it. Their lives will change,
Oh,
you
it's so,
know.
I think people don't do it enough of like pausing, like in the sense of like, or in a similar sense of like, if you see someone who's projecting, if
Mm-hmm.
you just pause with that person and is like, what's under the surface? Like, what's actually, where is this coming from?
Right.
Like, the same sense that you would pause and ask them questions, like, I think you should show yourself that.
Yeah.
So crucial because then you won't truly know
Mm-hmm.
until you become curious.
Yes. I remember one time, I don't even know where this came into me or why, but I remember just thinking, like, okay, I'm going to do my best to just take a breath before I respond.
Hmm.
Like as best as I can remember, I'm going to try and take a breath before I respond.
Mhm.
And the amount of triggering that came inside of me of like, okay, I'm ready to talk. And then they would talk over me again. They would cut me off, or like, okay, I'm ready to talk and I forgot, or I'm ready to talk. And now I feel shame that I'm making them wait. And I'm not playing this like tennis match with someone of
I
like
know.
the back and forth thing. And what it showed in me was like, wow, like if I just pause and take a breath, I probably speak half as much,
Hmm.
to myself included.
Hmm.
Right. And to really get to the underlying event of it. And this is where I think it's the whole ask a better question, get a better answer of like, what is really going on under here? Like, why am I doing this? Where did this start? What am I getting out of this? And I've had some experiences where like I'm doing this, whether with myself or my partner's helping me inquire. And I'm like, oh, what's actually here is so not what I thought it was.
Right.
Like it's not at all. The ego is so beautifully designed to
Yeah.
confuse us, to distract us, to like dangle a carrot over here. Like actually, it's not this at all. Being like, no, well, I didn't see that coming.
I know.
Yeah.
Make assumptions on ourselves either, too.
Right, right. This is not an able-bodied conversation. They're non-able-bodied. Like this isn't about abilities. This is about consciousness, and how do we work with that roommate that we're going to live with for the rest of our lives, however long that may be. And learning how to do that in a way that is like curious and compassionate of like you wouldn't do this to a friend. If you saw a friend struggling, you wouldn't like kick them while they're down.
I know.
you know, but how often are we like having a shitty day and then we're like, yeah, and you look fat. You're like, what the like what was that for? You know, like why did you do that? It's like,
Sucker punch, yeah.
right, just like, yeah, just like left hook, you know, and it's like, oh, like, man. And sometimes to the point of the first conversation is that point about community is like sometimes we need to put ourselves in the room with other people where we're like, wow, they all love me, but I'm not in the circle.
Mm,
You know, and in transparency, like that's one of the things that's confronted me lately. Like for most of my life, I have been my inner critic. I
mhm,
have been the guy, like I picked up the stick when my mom put it down, you
mm.
know, like when she was like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, you've lived enough of your life that I don't need to like shame you into performance. Now I'm like, well, I will then, you know.
Oh, it just carries on.
It really does until, you know, like I don't remember who said the quote, but like, you know, fire rips through your family until someone's willing to stop and brave it, you know, like,
Wow.
and that's the gift that someone is the chain breaker in our families is like, I'm done. You know, like I'm not going to play this game anymore where I'm beating myself up into submission. Like that doesn't like we would never do that to a child. Well, some people would, but you know, they're probably going to therapy, you know, at some point in their life,
Right.
hopefully. And it's something that, you know, and maybe I don't consume enough content, but I don't really see, I see people that are like, here's the quick fix. You know, I'm the Wim Hof guy that's like, don't even bother with the ice bath. See what
Right.
happens when you stop taking them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you hate yourself in your life? Go towards that. You know, like stop trying to fix ourselves into like enlightenment, you know, it's or bully ourselves into enlightenment. Like it's a weird thing. And I'm curious what you've seen because, you know, being in advocacy and psychology background, like what have you seen as social media in terms of like people pulling back the veil on what healing really looks like?
You know, I have a love-hate relationship with my job and just the association with influencer or like content creator nowadays.
Right.
Because I, even as a consumer, like you fall for those like tricks of people saying like I lost like 15 pounds of belly fat in 30 days. And there's just so much thrown out in the world and too much out there, in my opinion, sometimes. I just have a love-hate relationship with the algorithm, with social media, with how
Mhm.
creators are showing up and the fixes that they're putting out in the world, the lies. Well, there's a lot of good people. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say like it's all bad and we're
Hmm.
all media's corrupt. No.
What you see as, you know, the world of we'll call mental health, that social media and what essentially is just random people for the most part, you know, it's not like trained professionals or, you know, that type of world. It's a lot of people being like, this is my experience. And I'm curious kind of what your take on that has been like as a consumer of it, you know, and because you're definitely more in the world of social media than I am, but just like
Yeah.
how that's been for you.
Yeah, I mean, like it's also led me to have a poor relationship with my phone and social media in general. You know, it's to the point where like I am now having to delete platforms off of my phone because of things like that. And I'm now like only posting, and that's the only time that I'm really on social media because of my mental health. And it's gotten to
Goals.
that point. Well, okay, I shouldn't say I'm perfect with it either.
Of
I should
course.
explain that.
Goals, still goals.
I try.
I
But
want a second phone where all I do is post on it and I don't have the app on my phone otherwise. Like
uh,
I have like a burner phone.
yeah, or if I could just have a flip phone and then like an
Hmm.
iPhone for posting, yeah, that would be nice.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean like it's gotten to that point. So
Right. I'm curious. So and you don't have to be the one that puts this out, but if there was a niche of content that you think the world needs, what would it be?
I don't know. I also feel very passionate to what I'm doing, so I might be like biased,
Yeah.
but I mean this goes back to like me feeling like the disability community is just not seen the way that I see it.
Yeah.
And so I would argue that like the disability space on the online world should be pushed out to more people's feeds.
I agree.
I'm not even like crediting myself or anything. I'm not even like saying that.
You can. I've seen your views. You can.
No, no, stop. No, I'm not saying that I'm the disabled creator that like is doing it the best. No.
Sure.
I just am like, as a community as a whole, I would love for more of that to just be pushed out into the general public, because I mean, like, we're in 2025 and people don't know still.
Right.
And like, it's not like disabled people just exist in the 20th century. Like, this is like ever since humankind, like.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, as you started to answer it, I was like, it is actually what we're up to, because my answer to that would be men's health. It's like the amount of lack of good content in regards to what it's like to be a man on a mental health journey that's willing to go to therapy, that's willing to explore sobriety, that's willing to be honest about whether it's physical, mental, sexual, emotional abuse. Like, this stuff is real, and most people only get the highlight reel after they've arrived. They don't get the followers of like, I'm deep, maybe TikTok. I don't really mess with TikTok because I think it's just like it's too alluring. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to bear the addictive tendencies of the hypnosis algorithm.
it's brain rot.
Right. It's I don't know. It is these type of conversations that I do want to see more light shined on, because similar to the disability community, it's out of sight, out of mind until you're in it, and then I'm a man healing and I don't know what to do, and it's like, oh yeah, like this needs to be out in the world. And it will confront all the narratives of whether it's shame or inadequacy or productivity or, like addiction, like to be like, I'll be the guy that puts that out there. Like,
Oh
okay.
Yeah, I feel that.
The work that you do and putting this out, this messaging that you have out into the world, and what you just shared on of like more eyes on this community, more understanding, more inclusion. I don't know if I want to call it a dream state, but like maybe, what do you aim for?
That's a good question. Being in your emerging adulthood years, that's the question of the decade. I think I'm in this journey of like I feel like from my perspective, I don't want what the typical 25, 24-year-old girl wants in this phase of life. Okay, so like the first thing that comes up is like finances. I think a lot of like, again, like productivity culture pushes on is that you need to like be doing these 5-day work week and having 12 hours of constant working on a job that you don't necessarily want to be in. And I think I've come to acknowledge the wisdom that like other people have left me with, like this idea that you shouldn't spend your life at a job that you don't want or a job that you hate. But yeah, I have this huge growth mindset that I've been, actively working on and pursuing in physical, spiritual, mental, everything, all the pillars. So I guess I'm just aiming for a life that is purposeful. I'm very driven by meaning and doing something larger than me. So that's probably my answer for that.
Yeah. Okay. Follow-up question, just because I'm curious. How will you know if you hit the mark?
And that's a great question, because you also have to be satisfied with the journey too, of like, don't hyper focus on an end goal, because once you get there, you're going to realize that wasn't that you might realize that might have been not where you were supposed to head.
That's why I asked, because I'm sitting over here of like, she's got it, but
No.
my opinion doesn't matter, right? Like it's not my journey. It's like you have the impact of a life that's purposeful, and like from the outside perspective, like you have impact on the world, and you have value, and you have that. But that's why I asked the follow-up question about like, how will you know? Because my opinion of where I think you're at is irrelevant to your own journey.
I don't know. And I think that might be the beauty of life, is like,
I agree.
I don't know if you will ever know.
I
And
agree. And I love that you said enjoy the journey, because I think that might just be the thing, right? Is
yeah,
there is no arrival. There is no I got there, I got the ticket punched, the stamp
right,
collected. It's did I have fun while I was doing?
right. And I've learned that, I mean, like I've learned that in all facets of life, but like going back to like content creation, it's easy to look at. We have a metric of success in our career, and that is the amount of followers and viewership and likes and comments and saves and shares. And it's
Mhm.
all public. So
Right.
like, I've wrestled with this idea of if I just get 100,000 followers, I'll be happy. If I
Well,
just
I'll
land,
check in with you in 6 months because we'll probably find out.
oh no, you're funny. But things like that of like arrival points, like if you put so much energy on this idea that you're gonna hit satisfaction once you hit a certain number, I
Right.
think if you get caught up with that so much, and that's not the point of life.
100%. And we'll talk about an exercise in goal posting. Like, I remember talking to this one coach. He's got like 140,000 followers. We connected over content, and then he lives in Bali right now, and he's got really engaging content. And
Yeah.
I was talking to him on a Zoom call once, and he's like, "Yeah, I thought if I just got 100,000 followers, it all change." And I got to be real, like nothing changed.
Yeah,
He's like, "Yeah, I had a really good wait list for a while, but
right.
most of those people didn't convert. So then what? And it's like it really slapped me in the face of like it's not the followers, bud. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's grow it, but that end goal destination is not going to somehow light switch me into being like I love what I do and who I am and all that stuff because of that number.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's something that a lot of maybe they do. Like I said, I don't consume a lot of content, so like I'm sure a lot of content creators are like, look, guys, like just so you know, like this isn't it, like, and there are a lot more. I think content creators are like renting the Lambo to be like, no, fam, like if you hit 300K, like your life will be different. Sign up for my course, like,
All of this, yes.
oh, like it's so weird. It's so weird. And I actually noted, I'll be in Kansas City next month.
Yay! Oh my
Yeah, I'm
God.
I'm coming in. Did you ever meet Brady?
Brady. I don't
Brady
think so.
did Kat's Phoenix tattoo.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm
I've
I'm
never
coming
met him, but yeah.
I'm coming in to get a tattoo from Brady of Chester on my chest, so I'll be
Oh my
around.
gosh, that's
We'll have to
awesome.
because I was just thinking, I was like, oh, I want to hang out in person, like,
Yeah.
and so that just reminded me of social media is like it's not really real. It's super valuable, but it's not real.
Right.
There's still a screen in between you and I right now, and I look forward to the day next month when there isn't one, because that's
Right.
true connection.
Yeah. See, and that goes back to my original point that I made earlier in the podcast episode of like, I have a lot of fulfillment knowing that I'm like serving a huge community that deserves all this. But, when it comes to like these comments, sometimes they feel superficial, and I hate like admitting that because like they pour a lot into these comments, and I recognize that I'm beyond grateful that they leave those for me, but like I would love to just see the person in person
Mhm.
and like truly receive those words
Yes,
outside of the screen, outside of the phone. And yeah. So
100%.
I completely agree with what you mean about like the screen in between us just doesn't feel the same as sharing space.
And I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Gary V or, like some content creator that was like, look, dude, if you're balking about 300 views on your video, imagine yourself sitting in an auditorium with 300 people, and you got two comments. Imagine if two people raised their hand and were like, you changed my life, fam.
Oh
Like you
my
just you
God.
just changed my
Yeah.
day. And like that really struck me of like, because that happens. Like I'll put a video out, you know, it'll get 900 views, give or take on like a random one. And I
Mhm.
had this happen recently, and someone was like, they commented, it was about like being the black sheep of your family and the healing, and they were like, I needed this so badly. And then I
Mhm.
had a little, like, back and forth commented with them a little bit, and they were like, one, thank you so much for responding.
Mm.
Two, like this was so incredibly helpful. And I was like, it worked. I don't
Yeah.
care if it's got 9 views or 9 million. Yeah, I'd rather have 9 million, but that's easy to say until the trolls come out,
Yeah.
and then I'm playing like, do I want to slay this person or do I want to just let them be, you
Right.
know? Because it's just people like farting in an elevator, and like hoping you notice. And it's like, no one cares. Like,
Yeah.
stop, and sometimes I will engage in being like, what's under that? Like what's really there, guy?
Hmm.
And very, if ever, rarely does it do anything. It's like, okay, I actually, and this was a reframe back to the CBT thing, like a reframe I had recently on negative comments was, I'm stoked in a way to be a safe enough place for you to express your anger, your
Mm.
shame, your bitterness, because it's living in there. And the fact that you could just type it out of your body is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, if you come for me specifically, like I might delete your comment,
Yeah.
or I might just ignore you,
Right.
or I might slay you. I'm human too,
Yeah.
and so like I'm not above having a response, and so yeah, I think to the point of this opportunity to be with people, and that's like something, as you said it, I was like, man, like I could see obviously you in keynotes because that's what you've done and do, but like how amazing would it be to have a room where able-bodied, disabled-bodied, whatever bodied, and being like,
Yeah.
hey, let's come together and talk. Let's have a conversation together, not because I'm presenting to you, but I'm facilitating an experience that is deeply enriching for every person in this room. Like that's my end goal. I see that possibility for you. I see that for so many people of like, I just want to come together and be like, hey, beyond walk roll, beyond male, female, beyond gay, straight, like we're having a human experience. And if we could just agree on that thing, everything else is allowed,
Hmm.
and that has been something that has been so helpful for me in my healing is like, I'm allowed to be me.
Right.
Like I don't need to change to fit the room to be valuable enough to be in the room,
Mm.
and that's still something I struggle with of like, okay, well, what's the best content I can put out for other people? And it's like, hey, buddy, what do you want to put out?
Hmm.
And I think that's been a big part of my own journey. If you had a message to share with the world, if you could put a billboard in Times Square or in every airport in the world, like wherever you want, like what would your message to the world be?
I hold a high value of people just being present,
Oof.
that I think I would just put be present,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Like, I think that message needs to be spread
100%.
all around now more than ever.
Yep. Oh,
That's what I would leave the world with.
I love that. I love that. I say we live in a distraction based economy, and attention is the currency.
Damn, that's a good one. I'm taking that one.
Do it, please. They're all for the taking. Like because I agree. Like the ability to be present, whether it's with a child or a partner
Mhm.
or helping someone cross the street, like to just be witnessed is such profound, deep medicine. That could be the perspective shift to be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's hard. And life is hard. Like, let's be frank. Like, life is hard. And I
Yeah.
don't mean that in a declarative, like, woe is us. I mean that in like we live in a simulation where pain is real, like, and for that, like, so is beauty.
Right.
You can't have one without the other.
Absolutely.
Where can people find your content, find more about you, get involved, become an ally, learn more?
Ah, yeah. Oh my gosh. Please become an ally. We need you.
Real quick, actually, what does that mean to you? And what can that look like for them?
It means first acknowledging ignorance, if you have any, ignorance on the unknown of, like not knowing what life experience looks like for other people, um, and for them to exist in this world. But it's also, actively trying to better yourself and better educate and challenge your inner close circle knits of like conversations that are being had, and including disabled people a part of the conversation. There's this one quote that I think Judy Heumann also said, and she was like, I'm invited to the table, but no one ever questions if the table is accessible.
Ooh.
And I was like,
Ooh.
gosh, that would hit me.
Damn.
So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Oh, shout out to Judy Heumann, just an absolute legend of a
Legend. Oh my
human.
god.
I feel like Judy, I've never thought this before, but this is the visual I got was Judy Heumann was like the disabled RGB.
Oh, 1000%.
Like she's just such a gangster. And most people will have no idea who she is, so
I
look up
know.
Judy Heumann if you nothing to do
Oh,
today.
please. Oh my gosh, she's
Yeah.
powerhouse.
Oh my goodness. So legit. Man. Okay, so back to where can people find you and learn more?
Yeah. I mean, my handle's just my name, Anna Sarol, and I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. I forgot Threads is a thing.
Everybody forgot Threads. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah. But Threads, and yeah, I'm excited for just this podcast to be out in the world.
Yeah, me too. I deeply appreciate not only your mission, but just the light you are, like your ability to, just be yourself and be the full spectrum of it and allow people to have their version of it too. It's so deeply necessary in the world and such deep medicine for you shining light on something that most people, they don't know about, and to get out of their bubble. And like the Pilates stuff is the perfect example, like if you weren't making that content, the likelihood that someone who owns a reformer studio is going to check that out is like pretty much zero.
Right.
But that video I just checked had like 300,000+ views on it, and to be like, yeah, let's open up a conversation about, all the different ways we can be human.
Right.
And that is the last question I will leave you with is, what does it mean to be human?
I think it's so simple, but also so complex. I think just existence. Existing in now, I think, is what human is.
I love that. It's like I said, you're a master and you don't even know it. Like it is. It's like this. It's just be. There is there's no anything we put after that is all made up. It's like to just witness and to be and to exist and to feel and to share and to. I love your answer. So thank you for that.
I appreciate you.
Same. Thank you so much for the time, your attention, and your contribution both to this podcast and the world. This was wonderful.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you for listening. And we'll catch you on the next one, everybody. Aloha.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the interview today. And if you haven't already done so, please like or follow us on whatever platform you're listening to, and let us know if you have any questions or comments or requests of future interviewees.
And we hope you find this inspiration, the clarity, and the direction to fully lean into being human, whatever that means for you. Aloha.